Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Knowledge Effects series with Save the Children and Weston Buddies. Today is day 5, and our topic is going to be eating disorders. Now, this is a very heavy topic, so before we get started, we would like to preface this by saying we are not medical professionals in any way. The information that we are going to be discussing today is purely based on research, as well as some firsthand experience that was told to us. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or triggered by the topics discussed, please stop viewing this video and take a breather or seek some help. Just listen to your body and leave if you must. Now I'm going to pass it on to Bushra, and we're going to get started into the information today.
At any given time in Canada, as many as 600,000 to 990,000 Canadians may meet the diagnostic criteria for an eating disorder. These deadly but treatable disorders affect people of all genders, ages, classes, abilities, races, and ethnic as well as socioeconomic backgrounds. With a lack of awareness on this topic, combined with the many diet fads out there, youth are most susceptible to developing these disorders.
So what exactly is an eating disorder? There's many different types. It's a serious psychological disorder characterized by the severe disturbance in one's exercise patterns, eating behaviors, and even unhealthy preoccupation with one's body, shape, or weight. Eating disorders have one of the highest death rates directly attributed to the illness. In other words, the mortality rates for these disorders are outstandingly high.
As Linda mentioned, there are so many different types of eating disorders. It can range from the types that cause excessive eating, like binge eating disorder, or it can be excessive weight loss, which is like anorexia nervosa. And to name a few that are included in the DSM-5, there's pica, anorexia nervosa, Bulimia Nervosa, binge eating disorder, orthorexia, rumination disorder, and avoidant or restrictive food intake disorder. And just one more thing, it's very important to note that along with these eating disorders, there's often a lot of other psychological disorders in play. One of the more common ones being body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD. And this mental illness can cause its sufferers to become hyper-focused on perceived flaws in their appearance. While many people think that we have flaws in our appearance, those with BDD find it really overwhelming, and it's very serious for them. It gets in the way of their ability to live normally, and this disorder is often a precursor for a lot of eating disorders.
All right, so the first eating disorder that we're going to be looking into is anorexia nervosa, as well as looking into a little bit of atypical anorexia nervosa. And we're just going to basically go through what it's categorized by, certain signs and symptoms, causes, as well as the psychological aspects, as well as how it presents itself in our youth. So just getting started, looking at the DSM-5 kind of understanding of what this disorder is. Anorexia nervosa is an eating disorder that is categorized by behaviors that interfere with maintaining an adequate weight. And some of these behaviors can vary quite a bit, but they usually include at least one of the following. Restricting food, compensating for food intake through intense exercise, or purging through self-induced vomiting, misuse of medications such as laxative, enemas, or insulin. And those with anorexia nervosa typically are considered underweight in accordance to the BMI scale. In case you don't know what the BMI scale is, essentially it's just your height in comparison to your weight. So it kind of places you on underweight, average, overweight, obese, morbidly obese, and such. So usually people with anorexia are underweight, but those with atypical anorexia nervosa exhibit the same symptoms, but they usually remain within or above the average range for BMI.
Now onto the more psychological aspects of anorexia and atypical anorexia nervosa. Those with these disorders often struggle with self-esteem and self-image. And again, this can be associated with BDD, or body dysmorphic disorder, as we previously mentioned. And to be honest, with the increase of Photoshop and unrealistic beauty or body standards that are portrayed in social media, body dysmorphia has become so much more common. Eating disorders have been so much more common because of these things as well. And for these reasons, people develop things like body checking habits. And body checking habits are essentially when people feel the need to check certain parts of their body to make sure that it is a certain way. Usually with anorexia, people check to make sure that they can maybe see a certain bone. In Japan, there was a specific trend that was going around to check how skinny someone was, and they would put coins in their collarbone area, and people didn't realize it, but it was a form of body checking, and it caused a lot of issues amongst young girls who felt that they needed to have this much space in their collarbone area. And that's just one example of body checking. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the psychological aspect of anorexia, which is just this powerful fear of gaining weight or becoming fat. Honestly, sufferers just don't see the severity of their illness sometimes too. And sometimes they just choose not to as well. And it's very hard with psychological disorders like anorexia nervosa. There's this, once again, hyperfixation on the body and flaws that they see within the body or body goals and things like that. And this is very, very dangerous because with eating disorders, especially anorexia, it has such a high mortality rate that it's honestly considered one of the most fatal disorders, the most fatal mental disorders. And when we look at the causes for anorexia, there's so many different factors. As with every other mental illness, the exact cause of it is not known because of how many factors there are. There can be genetics and biology. Biological factors such as changes in brain chemicals may play a role in certain eating disorders. There's the psychological or emotional health factors that play a role. People with eating disorders may have a psychological and or emotional problem that can contribute to the disorder. BDD, as you mentioned before, bullying is another one, and other mental disorders as well. Moreover, there's like social issues. I think social issues is a very big one, actually. When you talk to most young girls and young boys, it's startling to see the statistics that show that so many young kids are scared of being fat because of what they see in the media. And beauty standards and overall societal or cultural view on weight and food and appearance can really affect how people see themselves and how they have what the relationship between themselves and their body is. It can cause a lot of people to develop a eating disorder because of these unrealistic body standards, right? And in seeing all of that, you might be wondering, how can I spot this? If maybe my friend is suffering with it, maybe my family member is suffering it, what can I look out for? Because a lot of people may just look at those who have an eating disorder and think, oh, they're just dieting or they're just exercising really good. And while that's the case for a lot of people, it's important that we still look out for our friends and family, and we try to identify any symptoms or signs that we think are troubling. And honestly, especially young children, youth, and adolescents are so much more susceptible to eating disorders that it's important that we pay attention. And so I'm just going to discuss some of the more common things that we can look out for. Things that are like kind of obvious, if someone is skipping meals or making excuses for not eating on a regular basis, it can be a sign that there's a little bit more to it and we should pay attention. Especially if there's more, there's a connection with the other symptoms on this list, such as adopting an overly restrictive diet. So maybe this person is eating a very, very low amount of calories, and to them it's a diet, but to you and to everyone else, it's too low to sustain the body. They might be obsessive calorie counting. That's one thing that's very important, and it presents itself in many, many eating disorders, especially anorexia. They might also have this persistent worry or complaining about, being fat, or talk about losing weight or gaining weight, and it might come off as troubling how much those with an eating disorder can talk about these things. Just like a really quick disclaimer, if someone has a bit of a fixation on their weight. It might not necessarily mean that they have an eating disorder, but we're going through this list just to make sure that those of you who are concerned about your friends and family have the right information and know what to look out for. So just because someone is maybe skipping a meal for today, don't just, go up to them and be like, oh my God, are you anorexic? Don't do that. Just keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on your friends and family. But just to go over some more of the other signs and symptoms that you can look out for, there's use of dietary supplements, laxatives, or herbal products for weight loss, excessive exercising, calluses on the knuckles from induced vomiting, troubles or problems with tooth enamel, that may be a sign of repeated vomiting, expressing depression, disgust, shame, or guilt about eating or gaining weight. There's usually an excessive weight loss when it comes to anorexia, and also dizziness or fainting due to lack of nutrition. When those with anorexia avoid eating food, they avoid eating a lot of the nutrients that they need in order to survive. We talked about sustaining the body briefly, and that's something that is really difficult for people who have anorexia. There's such a focus on losing weight that they forget, or they don't see the importance of also getting nutrients in. And like, again, just I want to mention, diets and exercising are not automatic signs of eating disorders, but multiple signs. If your friend is experiencing or showing at least half of these symptoms, it might be worth giving them a talk. I know I mentioned youth a lot, so I'm just going to maybe provide a little bit more information. Here we have a couple of pieces of statistics that we have gathered from research, and it just shows the importance, or the significance rather, the significance of eating disorders amongst youth. And here I'm just going to read off some of these startling statistics, really. 37% of girls in grade 9 and 40% in grade 10 perceive themselves as too fat. Even amongst students of normal weight based on BMI, 19% believe that they were too fat, and 12% of students reported attempting to lose weight. And, these numbers might not seem like too much, but grades 9 and 10, these are 12, 13, 14-year-olds, and it's very significant. The number of eating disorders that have been increasing every year is largely due to social media and the increasing unrealistic ideas of an ideal body. A lot of eating disorders develop in young adulthood. And, while I say that, I just want to emphasize that eating disorders can develop at any age. But that being said, a lot of them do develop in young adulthood. The median age of eating disorders onset was maybe 18, 19, around that age range for anorexia and bulimia nervosa. And for adolescents with eating disorders, the 17 to 18-year-old age group had the highest percentage of anorexia nervosa. There was a prevalence of eating disorders, one of them being anorexia nervosa. And speaking of anorexia, it is like the third most common chronic illness amongst adolescents after asthma and obesity. And I think we all know someone with asthma here and there. I sometimes need to use a puffer. I have a bit of asthma myself. And so when we think about the prevalence of things like obesity and asthma, anorexia is right behind that. It's one, those three are the most common chronic illnesses amongst adolescents. And it's very significant it's so significant that we need to pay attention. Moving on, 42% of first to third grade girls want to be thinner, and 81% of 10-year-old children are afraid of being fat. And so these statistics are just showing the severity. Like, these children are so young. They're in grade 1, grade 2, like 3, and 10-year-olds. It's devastating, really. But that's just a bit of, my personal take on it. It really is. It's heartbreaking to hear. And, when we look at these statistics, I want to make sure that we emphasize the need of conversation. we're doing these podcasts, these episodes to bring awareness on these topics. And so I would really emphasize talking to your younger siblings about eating disorders. And maybe not just, you don't have to say the name like an eating disorder. You can just make sure that you promote healthy eating, healthy exercising, and that you are, providing support for them. And just to close off, anorexia nervosa is a serious psychological disorder that wreaks havoc on the lives of so many people. It's deadly and it is prevalent amongst our youth. Unfortunately, due to stigma, a lot of people hide and don't seek help. But we strongly encourage anyone who might be suffering from this, or if you know anyone who you think is suffering, to please seek help. We have discussed quite a bit about this disorder, and we are going to continue discussing on two more topics, two more specific disorders. Bushra and Linda will be going over these. But yeah, please just keep in mind how dangerous these eating disorders are and how prevalent they are amongst young children. And do your part, try not to perpetuate the unrealistic body standards of society, and be there for younger siblings, your friends, and your family, and just do your part. All right, so I'm going to pass it on to Linda, Bushra. I'm going to pass it on to Bushra, and we're going to get started on the next eating disorder.
Hello everyone, my name is Bushra, and I'll be talking about bulimia. So what is bulimia? Bulimia is a mental illness causing food restrictions following intense binge eating. Now, how will that look like? For example, we're going to have someone who will be eating whatever they want as much as they want. And right after that's done, they're going to have this intense feeling of wanting to vomit out what they just ate, or it could be working out to the point of fainting. After hearing this, I'd really like to emphasize that having bulimia and all food disorders has nothing to do with your age, your gender, nor the way you look. It has nothing to do with any of that. Food disorders can happen to anyone. And actually, it was researched that food disorders, not all, but specifically bulimia, was found in many people due to biological, genetical, social, and psychological factors. I think a lot of people knew about the social and psychological factors, but the biological and genetical factors, I think a lot of people didn't know about this, because to me, it was honestly a surprise that this can be brought down to you by family members, by your family. And I think a lot of people are not aware of that. And I think that's something to really understand, because again, it could happen to anyone. Someone in your family could have bulimia and you just wouldn't know. You could have bulimia and you just wouldn't know. So I think that's very important to emphasize. Another thing is Bulimia Nervosa isn't completely understood by medical professions at all yet. It isn't. It's something that's still being researched to this day, even though bulimia was found in 1979 by a British psychiatrist named Gerald Russell. It was found in 1979, but it's still being researched to this day because there's a lot to unravel in bulimia. A lot of things that people don't understand yet, which is why it's very important to be aware of this issue and about this food disorders, as well as many food disorders. Just because you think that you may not go through it, or just because anyone can go through it. So if you think you can't go through it, you never know what life has in store for you. You should really be aware of it. But also, you don't know who around you is going through this, right? Which is why it's very important to be aware and empathetic and understand what people are going through. What are some signs? So, weight change. And weight change can be weight gain or weight loss. So someone can lose weight and gain weight while having bulimia. Bloating is it's a really big factor, and you can be bloating a lot. And a lot of people that have bulimia bloat a lot. You can have cuts on your hands and knuckles due to purging, dehydration, guilt or anxiety due to food or eating, restricting eating food, tooth pain or discolored teeth, and this would be due to vomiting. And because of that, a lot of people have oral problems. Negative body image. We talked about this earlier in our podcast. You would have body dysmorphia. A lot of people have body dysmorphia, and body dysmorphia comes with a lot of food disorders. Also, I'd really want to emphasize common factors. So a lot of people that do have food disorders have factors that come with having this food disorder. And what I mean by that is a lot of people can have depression, a lot of people can have anxiety, and especially in bulimia, people can have depression, you can have anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder is very, very, very noticeable when having bulimia. And a lot of people talk about how difficult it is because, again, it's a really huge factor. History of trauma, again, as I said before, you never know what people's lives have. You never know your journey. You never know someone's chapter. This is why you have to be very empathetic and understand that people go through different things, and what road brought them to this very tough journey. I think it's for everyone. You have no, I'm not saying that someone has the right to go and ask someone why this sort of happened to them. No, it's the fact that you need to understand that people have these food disorders and many other mental illnesses due to very traumatic incidences. Not all people have history of trauma, and that's why they have these very difficult this very difficult journey. But a lot of people do have a history of trauma, and it's very, very important to understand. And it could also be linked with self-harm. This is honestly, when researching this and really understanding what people go through when going through bulimia, I feel like I didn't even touch upon everything yet. I feel like I can never really understand what it truly feels like to go through this. But for whoever's going through any food disorder and any mental illness disorder, my heart goes out to you, and I hope you stay strong, and I hope your family and friends could truly be there to support you and help you through this very difficult chapter of your life. And I truly believe that, I really do hope, with people now being more aware of this, and just people truly understanding and being empathetic onto what is happening to people, I really do hope that people who are going through this can make it through it. And that is all for bulimia. Thank you so much for listening.
So I'll be talking about orthorexia. Orthorexia is an eating disorder characterized by the intense obsession with eating healthy. So unlike bulimia and anorexia, people with orthorexia, they're not really concerned about losing weight or decreasing in weight. What they're more worried about is the quality of the food rather than the quantity of the food. They're more concerned about the purity of the food and the health benefits of the food. I know that sounds confusing to many people because there's obviously many factors that comes along with having a healthy lifestyle. With that being said, food. But it's also important to keep in mind that you should always it's good to have a healthy relationship with food as well. So those with orthorexia, to an extreme, they can neglect many types of the food groups, which is carbs, meat, dairy, anything that's not natural or organic. So obviously, because of that, there's a lot of health risk and health issues that comes along with having orthorexia. So what are some of the causes? As of right now, there's little research to understand the exact cause of orthorexia, but obsessive compulsive tendencies and previous or current eating problems are established risk factors. Perfectionism, severe anxiety, and a need for control are among the other risk factors. And according to some studies, those who prioritize their health over their careers might develop orthorexia in the future. Age, gender, education level, and socioeconomic status may be an influence, but again, more research is needed to make that conclusion. So, is it common? Well, it's really difficult to understand the difference or figure out the difference between those with orthorexia or those just have a typical preoccupation with eating healthy food. So, is it common? It's really challenging to answer that question. And obviously, like any other eating disorder, orthorexia can cause a lot of problems, medical issues in the long run. Malnutrition, significant weight loss, and other medical concerns are just a few of the health issues that can arise as a result of obsessive behavior. Lifestyle disruption, personal anguish or difficulties in social or economic functioning as a result of healthy eating ideas or behaviors might create lifestyle disruption. So just to recap what orthorexia is an eating disorder characterized by the intense obsession with eating healthy.
Today we have an anonymous submission from one of our peers who had suffered with disordered eating for a few years. This person emphasizes the impact of bullying and social media that played into the development of their disorder and how obsessive an eating disorder can really be. We're going to go a little bit more in depth with this submission, so this is another disclaimer. If you feel like this conversation is too much, please listen to your body and leave if need be. All right, so we're gonna get Linda to read our submission here.
For a lot of my childhood, I grew up being made fun of for my size by family and friends alike. It didn't really get to me until grade 5. From grade 5 to 7, I struggled with a really bad self-image and self-esteem. I often tried diets, but never really stuck to them. I tried diet pills as well at the age of 13, but obviously those never worked. It wasn't until grade 8 that I finally broke and developed an eating disorder. The tipping point? When someone I consider a friend measured my wrist and called me fat because their fingers couldn't wrap around it and touch. From grade 8 to 9, I saw myself as a sack of potatoes, someone who was unlovable because of my body. I dieted, I fasted, or rather starved myself for days and exercised off every calorie I ate. The worst part was really that no one noticed something was wrong. I was an obese child that miraculously lost weight. I was often told, "Whatever you're doing, honey, keep doing it, you look great." Having an eating disorder and being overweight was one of the worst things I experienced. I lost weight in the eyes of those around me, but I never saw that progress. I was completely absorbed by the numbers on the scale and the calories that I lost to over-exercising. Getting into recovery was hard, and to be honest, if it weren't for my friends and family, I probably would have faced so many more issues because of my eating disorder. Luckily, I didn't have any organ damage or serious medical issues, but I was left mentally scarred in a way. That being said, recovery was one of the best decisions I ever made, and at that rate I was going, I don't think I would live very long.
Now that we heard this story, honestly, to me, I just find it really sad that, like, even as young kids, we have this, like, pre-notion of, like, what society wants us, and people, like, other kids bully other kids for not looking a certain way. And then, obviously, that clearly scarred this person completely and made them, go through this really tough and gruesome journey. But, it was really sad, man. I don't know. How about you guys? What do you guys think?
Honestly, I think it was really unfortunate that even your close friends and family, they don't notice anything because they only see the progress, right? They only see the progress of it, right? So they completely neglect everything else because, like I mentioned before, like everyone has different goals when it comes to a healthy lifestyle, whatever it may be, and there's a lot of factors when it comes into like having a healthy like journey, like food, dieting, exercising, everything you can think of. But you should have a healthy relationship with it, right? And for the like diet, I researched so many like diets out of curiosity, and I came across diets that are extremely stupid. Like I'm gonna say it's so stupid, and I can't understand it because another disclaimer as well, if you feel uncomfortable at any point, please leave the video if need be. For the diets that I researched, there was one that stuck with me because it just didn't make sense. It was a 5-bite diet. I don't know if you guys heard about it. A 5-bite diet. Essentially, for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or breakfast and dinner, you can eat anything you want, but it has to be 5 bites. And when I read an article on that, I was like, who sat down one day and thought this diet was okay? And honestly, these diets are usually targeted towards young teens or young kids, right? And they don't know any better at that age, right? Because they don't have that support. So for this person, they took weight loss pills. I didn't know how to react. I heard weight loss teas before. I definitely heard about those, right? But weight loss pills, and I can imagine that these pills were targeted as, oh, the great thing you should consume to lose weight, the great next thing, right? So obviously nowadays there's a lot of marketing because everything's so virtual, right? Everything's virtual, so everything's marketed in such an like. And after listening to this person's story, I was just shocked because this person's story definitely gave us another perspective, right? Because at the age of 13, weight loss pills, that's terrifying, right? For someone at that age to consume such a thing. But Maven, how about you? What's your thoughts?
Honestly, some of the things that really stuck out, when I was listening to the story is really just when they put the quote in there, like, whatever you're doing, honey, keep doing it because you look great. And that really stuck out to me because, sometimes we look at our friends and we we say, oh my God, you lost so much weight, like you're looking so much better. And we don't realize, we don't know, what really this other person is doing to lose weight. And honestly, it's just really sad because I can imagine that, this person might have been thinking about recovery at, any point in their experience. And then hearing that might have been, something that made them continue doing what they were doing. And, they really did emphasize the whole being overweight and, having an eating disorder. And I think, previously I mentioned anorexia nervosa, atypical anorexia nervosa. And it's when, again, it's when people who have the disorder are within the BMI ranges of average or above that, obese and things like that. And, this is just a really great example of the way sometimes we can fail our friends and our family by not noticing, not paying attention to these things. It's, looking at the ages too, from like grade 5, like I don't think any child from such a young age, like that was like what, 10, 11, like this must have been one of the most traumatic experience. And I think eating disorders for anyone who has them or had them is one of the more difficult things. And they also mentioned, how obsessive it got. It almost didn't, it seemed like it went from looking at the body to just looking at the numbers, because they said that, they looked at numbers on the scale, like they were so completely absorbed in it and the calories that they lost. And apps like MyFitnessPal don't really help. They didn't mention any apps that they use, but I would assume that, these apps really did play a role. MyFitnessPal, if you guys don't know, has the, like, where you would input how much calories you eat and then how much you exercise, and it'll tell you how much that you lost and things from that exercise. And, I'm only saying this because I just want to emphasize the numbers. It's psychologically, you go from looking at the body to just looking at yourself as numbers. How much do I weigh today? What do I measure today? How much did I eat today? How much did I lose today? And it really shows how obsessive and dangerous this eating disorder can be, because at the end of it, you stop looking at yourself as a person and just see yourself as a number. So you don't know when the numbers are getting too low. And it's just, this is a really good submission because it touches on a lot of things that we've mentioned today. And that's kind of my thoughts on it, really.
Definitely, I 100% agree. Thanks to this person's submission, we were able to learn a lot, and those who are watching today, I hope you guys learn as well. It's very important for you guys to do your research as well. So below in our description, we have added some reliable resources, and we also have added some links that we have used for our research today.
All right, so we just want to make another, disclaimer. I know we've made a bunch of disclaimers, but this is just really to emphasize that, we've done a lot of research on this, and we try to use the more credible sources. And we don't claim to be medical professionals. Again, we are not psychologists, therapists, anything. We just aim to bring awareness on this topic and promote discussion. That being said, if you believe that you or someone you know may be suffering from an eating disorder, please seek professional help. Please talk to somebody, because this is a very dangerous and very serious thing. And we really want you guys to be safe.
Hey guys, now that you watched this video, don't forget to subscribe, because it does not kill you to support. Then, as you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that jingling button. I don't know what it's called, bell button.